This is a speech I wrote called Your Personal Prison of Perception. Imagine being chained to a wall by hands and feet in an unknown location. You reside in a dark dungeon that you've never seen because not even the smallest ray of light penetrates its walls. You've been there your whole life and are completely unaware of the world outside, the sunlight, the stars. You've never known family or friends. You've just been trapped in darkness alone. I'm talking about an illness, a disease of the mind. Often witnessed and rarely discussed, this disease's symptoms are evident in almost 100% of the entire populace of the world. It has become so rampant, so common, it's simply overlooked and put aside. Now face the reality that this is the truth for very nearly every person in the world. We are in bondage, not of the body, however, but of the mind, constantly victimized and restrained by this horrible illness. Humans suffer a condition. It affects us all, many of us to a vast degree. Its consequences are frighteningly enormous, tragic, and in some cases horrifically catastrophic. It's the root of all misunderstandings, disagreements, arguments, physical fights, international tensions, military conflicts, and most notably, wars. It's a condition that is simple yet complex. Simply put, the illness is our own perception. We are all born the same, pure of this disease of the mind. But then tragically, we're raised by people who've developed it themselves. Through limited and biased teachings, we learn about the world. We go about our lives, causing our own self-fulfilled prophecies and basing entire dispositions on people and types of people based on extremely limited selection of samples. Our worldview, no matter how educated, falls victim to bias and subjection. These biases change from town to town, from country to country. It creates petty differences between relationships as small as two neighbors to as big as two countries. Tragically, people live by these biases and limited perceptions, unaware that if they were on the other side of the issues, they would behave in the same way as their perceived enemy. They go about their lives preaching their one truth, which is actually an opinion, and condemning all other lifestyles, in either subtle or blunt format. I've mentioned bias, perception, and opinion. But the worst form of this illness is one that causes none other than hate. For some, this disease of the mind consumes them to the point that they can become enraged with people who are different than themselves. Others' views become wrong, and their own become morally correct. While for the one on the other side who is just as consumed with hate, the same happens, but with different views attached to each. This quickly becomes a battle of who is right, when they don't realize they simply have to do what's right for themselves. Each part plays the struggling victim, unwilling to admit to the persecution they create. It's a battle of ethics, in which it's the differing ethics that are at war. People live by their own biases so strongly that they push them on others already expect people to be living by them, which creates tension, disagreements, and ultimately, hate. Stubborn, there seems to be no possible end to the cycle of self-imposed ignorance and hate. People so easily forget that we all come from the same earth, and that we are all of weak flesh, and that we are all people capable of feeling joy and pain, and therefore, none of us being impervious are all equal and worthy of the same respect. The fact is, many of us are chained to that wall in that pitch-black, unknown location alone. We're chained to the wall of our perceptions, views, and opinions, and the perpetuation of hate. The only thing we have is the walls around us. The darkness prevents us from seeing anything else, including other people, none of which are even within the same walls. We don't know what we truly look like in the light. We've never known our own friends and family. We know only our interpretations of them through the flawed lenses of our own minds. We're trapped in our perceptions, vastly unable to relate to anyone else whom we've deemed different enough from us. We've dug ourselves deep in this hole of this biased perception. With every act of it, the hole becomes deeper, and every second we wait to crawl out means a harder path ahead of us. Every act of wrongdoing requires undoing in the mind. Every inch we fall is another we must climb. But there's a cure for this disease of bias and hate. By being aware of these walls and these chains, we can effectively start to break free of them. Imagine having been trapped in that shell of a dungeon your whole life, when finally something breaks through to you. A wall cracks open, the sunlight pours in, the cuffs holding you in place snap open. The walls crumble down around you. All of a sudden you can see the world. You don't feel so alone because you can see and understand other people, even if you don't agree, from something as small as a person's favorite color to religious and spiritual views to politics. Much is revealed to you now that you are free from your walls. And you realize that as you explore throughout the rest of the world, you'll learn even more than what you know from this glorious revelation. It's impossible to hate someone if you can empathize with them completely. If everyone could break free of their own perceptions and bias, the illness would be defeated. All of your misunderstandings, disagreements, and fights would never occur. International tensions would not exist. Wars would become obsolete. Without our biased perceptions, without our hate, without our selfishness, there would be no need to discriminate or resort to any kind of violence. If everyone could find it in them to understand and respect others' beliefs, we would live in a world completely free of oppression and hate, in which no suffering would be dealt by human hands. This may seem at first like an overly optimistic request, but it only requires that you realize the truth that we are all made of the same flesh, bleed the same blood, and strive to our own goals. You yourself not being hostile to anyone, no hostility can be returned. The world not being hostile, there's no hostility to speak of.